Before we get into this video, please know that I am not like an Xbox flag waver fanboy. It's just that they are doing crap that is really interesting to talk about. And they just posted a new, I think it's Inside Wire, but just a new blog on Xbox came out this morning. And at first I thought it was just kind of reminding people what they're doing, which it is. But they actually announced some goals and deadlines that really make it seem like 2022, by then, all these domino pieces that they've been setting up to get kicked over, they're going to get kicked over next year. So amazing things about Game Pass, as well as coming games, and especially plans are in this blog that I felt like we need to talk about. So that's why I want to talk about it. That's it. I'm not trying to wave no flags. It's just interesting to talk about to me. And I'm curious on what your take is on it. So hello, it's Samurai Kibiji. If it's first time here, I like to build game hype with people and also find interesting things to talk about and have some fun with you. E3 is coming, so subscribe if you want to follow that hype train with me. But let's get into this blog, and just there's a lot of things in it that I wasn't really, I don't know. Like when I first started reading this, I was like, okay, whatever, cool, thanks for the reminders. But they have this part going over Game Pass and how as a business model it is working, which is very shocking. They also go over how this part right here to me is probably the most interesting part, how they are really going to be competing with Amazon, Google, and Netflix much more than PlayStation. And just the success that their indie people that they're working with, as well as all the studios that they have working. Lots to go over. So I don't want to spend too long on it though, because I want to get your thoughts on it. But nutshell of, and I'll link this article below if you want to like read it thoroughly. But the nutshell is Xbox Game Pass is changing the way we discover, connect, and play. And this first part is basically saying gamers are discovering so many more games. And the biggest quote I like here is 90% of members of Game Pass are playing games they wouldn't have tried without Game Pass. I have a whole video about that. It's great. But to me, the more interesting thing about this part, how does Game Pass work as a business model? Instead of people buying in that marketplace, you know, for $30 to $60, $70 or whatever games, how is this $10 to $15 subscription working for Xbox? Why is Microsoft, even though they have plenty of money to do so, how are they greenlighting Xbox just spending all this money? It's because it's working. It's because it's working. Including with partnerships, which we'll get to. But like partners see an engagement go up by more than 8 times when they enter Game Pass, which go figure, because people can play it for free. But what's really interesting is that members of Game Pass tend to be spending 50% more than non-members. 50% more than non-members, which is crazy. I found myself in a situation like a week or two ago, and this might be an example of how it's working. Kingdom Hearts, one of my favorite series, is on Game Pass, and it had all the games on there, but recently the collections were leaving and only 3's on there. I wanted to keep one, so I bought like the 1.5 plus 2.5 one. Maybe that's an example. Maybe people try games on Game Pass or wanted to try it, and they don't, when it leaves, they spend money on it. I don't know. But that's just really interesting to see that members of Game Pass tend to spend more money than people that don't have it, which is shocking because, like, why would you need to spend money if you have Game Pass? But partners, that works out too, because apparently the EA Play partnership, EA has had like record usage on Microsoft platforms. They have more than 200% of hours played ever since EA Play partnered with Game Pass Ultimate, which makes sense. You know, it's just more accessible. But who knows how that'll work out for, say, like Battlefield 2042 and other games that EA does soon. Like, is that going to give people more exposure? We'll see. Knockout City. Knockout City is a great example. Like, that is a game that they have a free-to-play strategy with it, but if you have Game Pass Ultimate, you play that. But Square Enix and even PlayStation. Square Enix's game Outriders, if you remember, launched day one on Game Pass back in April, which is still crazy to think about to me, because that was a big AAA title from them. But it was the number one selling digital game on Xbox during its launch week, which, okay, did it have anything to compete with? But it was also top 10 selling digital game on Xbox for the month of April. Not to mention MLB The Show. This is way more impressive to me because this was a PlayStation exclusive game for so long. And then it came to Xbox. And what happened? It launched day one Game Pass. Instead of just having it on Xbox, they had a day one on Game Pass. MLB The Show was the biggest sports game of the past year on Xbox and the second biggest sports game of all time on Xbox. It was the second biggest sports game of all time on Xbox. And it was this is the key thing, business. It was the number one selling paid game on Xbox for the month of April. It was the number one selling paid game. So not downloaded because of Game Pass, paid game. People bought it, even though it was day one on Game Pass. Why did people buy it? I don't know. Why would they buy it when they have it available on Game Pass? Maybe it's because like the Kingdom Hearts story, they wanted to make sure they keep it. Maybe people try it out on Game Pass and buy it afterwards. I don't know. But to me, this part is the most interesting and really how they are trying to compete. Rather than PlayStation and Nintendo having things that they're doing great, as Xbox and Phil Spencer have acknowledged. You know, it's not about like having a war. Competition is great because that just gives us consumers all the more great stuff. But Nintendo, you just play our games on our platform. PlayStation, you just play our games on our platform. They're starting to branch out, though, to be able to play on PC. They've had a little bit of streaming. But Xbox is going far bigger and becoming something much more than just a console. They are confirming here over the next year, by the end of this year, all these things are going to happen. And they confirm a lot of it here that we've been like speculating and rumoring. They're working with global TV manufacturers to have internet supported televisions just have Xbox built in. They're exploring new subscriptions offerings. And who knows what that means, but built-in TVs. They're working, this is really interesting to me, they're working with telecommunication providers like T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T, and they want those places to be able to sell Xbox All Access, which is their kind of like, you know, payment plan, just like a phone, which is why it makes sense like you would go to these places. But to sell Xbox All Access instead of like a console in their store, you know? But if somebody gets Xbox All Access, they get a console and Game Pass Ultimate built into one kind of paid monthly subscription. That's really interesting to see. Just imagine walking into like, you want a new phone, but then you see like, oh, it comes bundled with an Xbox All Access offer. Like, holy shit. And they're still working on streaming. They're working on streaming devices for cloud gaming. So that confirms the dongle idea that a lot of people have been thinking about, just plugging that into a USB port, and that's your console through streaming, you know, if you have good enough internet. Coming to more countries soon, territories. I'm excited about this. Over the next few weeks, cloud gaming on browser. I have an iPhone, man. I'm so happy. Will finally be open to Game Pass Ultimate members. Anybody using Edge, Chrome, or Safari will be able to play Game Pass Ultimate games, or just what's included on the xCloud service. And that's going to work if you're just on whatever device that has that browser. That's bonkers. Like, just, I can finally do that crap on my iPhone. Finally. Few weeks too. So that's much sooner than a few months. And they're going to be updating their data sensors that do xCloud with an Xbox Series X hardware. So instead of because they've been running on Xbox One hardware in terms of xCloud, but they're trying to update all their data centers around the world with Xbox Series X hardware. So that way you could experience games in the most optimal way you can in terms of streaming. So you'll be playing the optimized version of games rather than the one version of games. That's really cool to see. And of course, later this year, we'll add cloud gaming directly into the Xbox app on PC. Great. And integrate it into our console experience to light up scenarios like try before you download. This is crazy stuff, man. And you might be thinking like, okay, well, I don't care. Like, cool, it'll be everywhere, but they got no games to play. They talk about that too? They talk about that too, but to me, this is kind of the biggest thing, because this is why exactly they're saying, we're looking at Netflix, Amazon, and Google much more than PlayStation, Nintendo, because this right here, being at telecommunication providers, being in TVs built in with internet, being on browsers that support the streaming, dongles, upgrading the data centers to have the most optimized hardware, that's all stuff that they are saying will be done by the end of the year. But the games, they bought Bethesda, they bought ZeniMax's, things, Bethesda, ID Software Studio, I freaking forget, Arcane, all those studios for $7.5 billion, and indie developers, dude. With more than 23 studios worldwide creating games for Xbox, our goal is to release at least one new first-party game into Xbox Game Pass every quarter. Role-playing games, shooters, strategy titles, adventure games, and more, like platformers, horror, whatever. They're all being built by our first-party teams to ensure a steady stream of compelling exclusive content to explore. Exclusive content, keep that in mind. But yeah, one big first-party game every quarter on Game Pass is quite the thing. And that's what everybody was thinking too. Because imagine each of these games have like a 3 or 4 year dev cycle. Well, they got 23 studios. So that would still give each of those studios that 3 or 4 year development cycle. But they just keep cycling out, So that's interesting. And of course, they're also supporting indie developers with the ID at Xbox program. And they're indie developers. They've earned over $2 billion since the program started. So indie developers are working hard too. Their games are going to come to Game Pass day one. And it's just really interesting to see all this starting to come together. This domino effect. Buying ZeniMax. Getting xCloud going. Making all these partnerships. It's a domino effect that Xbox is setting up that we haven't gotten the full front of. We saw the beginnings of it building up to the launch of the Xbox Series S and X. But this launch year hasn't been too hype. But that's because everybody's been saying this. Xbox is playing the long game. And they're playing a game that the only reason I talk about it more than like Nintendo and PlayStation is because it's just more interesting to me that they're doing this thing of just being the big picture. Like, they're still going to have that game side of things. That's why they bought freaking ZeniMax. That's why they got all these Bethesda studios, is because they want to also do what PlayStation and Nintendo are doing, make quality games. But they're doing that because they want to make Game Pass flourish as the best gaming subscription service on the market. They want to make that a part of having the Xbox platform everywhere, on freaking mobile, on browsers, on TVs, on dongle sticks. They're trying to make something beyond just playing it on your one box. And that's really something that PlayStation and Nintendo just aren't doing. I'm not saying it's a better thing, but to me, it's just something that neither of those two are doing. Again, I'm not saying it's them like being better. It's just more interesting to me because I'm always going to look at these games and it's exciting. And that's why they do bring up the games and like look forward to this Sunday where we'll talk about the games. But, they mentioned again, they got their 23 studios working. They have a lot of indie studios working with them. They have games coming. But it's just the way they're distributing it that nobody else is doing right now. And it's really, really impressive to me. So that's why I just thought this was interesting to talk about. Summer Game Fest is later on today. And E3 is this weekend. And we know that Battlefield 2042 is going to be that Xbox showcase. And probably some other cool stuff. So we'll see the games this Sunday. But what do you think? Does Xbox, is this going to work out for Xbox? Is it... I don't know. It's just a really big picture story that I want to talk about. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe if you've been here before and find the content interesting. And don't forget to be geek, be proud, be awesome.